Hi, this is Gary Matsuoka from Laguna Hills Nursery, and in this session today we'll be talking about how to deal with how to fix the plants that you put in your landscape. So one of the problems we're having these days is that the growers are being told to grow plants in compost, and the problem with compost is it changes as it ages, and you keep it moist and watered properly, the compost turns into muck, and a lot of the plants are failing before they have a chance to get established in the garden. Even sometimes we're seeing plants failing 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, even 10 years after being planted. They're dying, falling over due to the compost that the growers originally grew them in. So a lot of our good customers have learned, and we've taught them how to fix the plants before they install them. So here's a plant that we often have trouble with, is the Anaganthos or kangaroo paw. So these are noted in heavy soil that they often rot, fall over, die. So the problem is that the growers use a very organic soil. So this soil is about 85% organic. So over time it's going to shrink and turn real sludgy, and that's usually not good for the kangaroo paw, which is generally it's quite drought tolerant, but when there's no roots left it does have trouble. So what we do with these, I have set up here a firm surface. Usually we do this on pavement. It doesn't give. This piece of plywood covered with tarp is pretty sturdy, pretty firm, so what we often do with these plants is simply drop the root ball on a firm surface. This isn't quite as firm as pavement would be, but it's not bad. And it does fracture the soil a bit, and generally we don't lose too many roots. You can always compensate if you lose some root, but you don't want to lose a major portion of it. And we'll also use a sharpened stick to poke out a lot of the soil. So this soil that this plant's growing in is one of the higher quality nursery soils that are being used, but it still it does have peat moss, but I can see wood shavings in here. So the wood shavings can go toxic within half a year to a year, and this plant then just turns kind of an ugly yellow-green color, doesn't grow much, and slowly fails. Either that, or it looks so bad that the homeowner will pull it out and just throw it away because it just doesn't look good in the landscape. So here we're loosening up the root ball some more to shake off a lot of the potting soil, or in the trade we call it the growing medium. Now, the most gentle way to do this type of work is with a sharp stream of water. Because of the last 3 or 4 years of drought, we've learned how to do it without using too much water. But if you just set the plant on a lawn area and turn the hose on, that is the most gentle way to do this type of work. You just blast the soil off. So in the days when we had water, we would sit out in the back of the growing ground area we had and just wash off the soil. Now here it's getting loose enough that the rest of this may just shake off. And you can see I'm trying hard to avoid damaging the roots. We'll generally lose about 10 to 15%. Now whenever you work with the soil, the roots become less effective at picking up water for about 2 weeks. It takes them about 2 weeks to recover. So we have to do something to the plant for the 2 weeks following this operation to keep it from drying up. So the roots aren't very operational for about 2 weeks. So at the store we'll often put them in partial shade. We don't like to do dark shade, but just a little bit of shade, either in a greenhouse or underneath a shade structure. Essentially, we're getting about half the sunlight that would normally pick up. In the garden, you can put a tall object next to it to shade it for part of the day. That helps. Your other option would be to, on a plant like this, cut the foliage in half. Take off the flowers too at the same time to take some stress off it. The flowers use up energy. And plant it with about that much foliage, and that'll be cut the water use of the plant enough that the root damage won't cause serious problems. If you were to do this, we avoid doing it during the hottest weather, preferably 60 to 80 degrees for this kind of operation is safer. Now, sometimes we do both. We'll shake off a lot of the soil, pry it off, and then wash it off at the very end to get rid of a lot of the stuff in between the finer roots. We just want to make sure this plant, the crown of it, which is the area right where the stem turns into roots, that area tends to rot easy if there's too much organic matter right at that area. So I want to try to get in a little deeper on this plant. Now often if you have smaller plants with smaller root balls, like a quart size or 4-inch pot, even if you don't take off the organic matter but you surround the plant with a lot of material like sand or volcanic rock or sponge rock, that'll compensate for the fact that you've got some sludge around the roots. Keep it airy enough so it doesn't rot the crown of the plant, and the plant will still do well. So the smaller you buy the plants that the growers grow, the better results. The more of the soil you take off from the root ball, the better results. We haven't seen many growers who use great soil. I don't know that I have a single one out there. Well, there are some orchard suppliers that we use that certainly they have to have decent enough soil so that the farms don't have trouble down the road, and we don't touch those. But for most of the retail growers that grow for the homeowner market, they're not as worried about 2 years down the road on their plants. They're more worried about getting them out to market within, usually it's 2 to 3 months time they want to get the plant out of the nursery into the stores so they can be sold. And for that purpose, a lot of times this type of organic soil is superior in performance to a better mineral-based soil that's permanent. Most of the research just show that this organic type soil does become toxic after 8 months to a year or so, but the nurseries don't seem to want to deal with that information. Either that, or they've just been told without looking at the research that they should be growing plants in organic matter. And certainly in the last generation, we all want to be more organic. Well, soil is just not, soil is made out of essentially quartz, not dead plant material, which most of this is. Okay, this is good enough. This plant should now perform a lot better. And what we'll do is put it back in the same container and put some better soil around it. Our top potting soil, which is 2/3 mineral or 2/3 permanent soil, is going to be good enough for this plant. So here we've got a tray full of it. We'll try to, when we're putting it back into the pot, we'll try to make sure the roots are evenly spaced and they're not all clumped together on one side. Now if you put this in the ground, if you have just good native soil, that's fine. You just kind of push the native soil around the root system, try to get the roots, like in this pot, I can shake this pot to redistribute the roots in the soil. In the ground, it's harder to do that. You can actually do it by having a hose nearby and watering the soil into and around the roots of the plant. In the ground, it's pretty important to watch it when you first water it, sometimes the dirt settles too deep and you've got to pull the plant back up. So try to hold the plant in place as you're putting the soil back as you water it so that it doesn't shift on you and the soil doesn't shift too deep. So now we've got our soil back up to about the same level. We always, when you do all this work, we tend to want to fertilize it at the same time. We usually use a time release chemical fertilizer at the nursery. Now you can certainly, and in the long run, it's better to use organic fertilizers. We do the chemical just because we know it works faster and for a long period. And then we'll water this about 4 or 5 times or more. You have to get the soil very wet once you do this operation. Within 30 minutes, get it nice and soaked. Now, here's another plant that we always have trouble with. This is Manzanita arctostaphylos. Very few of our customers have success with these because of the soil that the growers use. And this one, even though the basic soil below it, which is sandy dirt, is quite good, it is full of wood shavings. And the wood shavings are going to be what kills this plant. Just like trying to live in a place where there's dead bodies laying around you. This is a plant trying to live in soil with dead bodies of other plants in its root system. It doesn't work too well. Now this plant is relatively easy to remove the soil on it. We can just shake it all off, pick out the pieces of wood that are left. You don't have to get it all out. If it's 80-90% cleaned up, you're more than good. Much better than it started out being. Now we haven't worked with Manzanitas that much. We're doing this more as a test because some natives don't like their roots messed with. We know Matilaha poppy is really sensitive to any root work, so you do have to be careful. This one we're going to see how the Manzanitas react to this. Some natives don't seem to care at all. You get Galvasia, and you can do anything to that plant. And Galvasia among the natives can handle the wood-based soils pretty well. It just doesn't seem to be very sensitive. But anyway, we'll stick this one back in. Now if you put this in the landscape, put your native soil around it, hopefully it's fairly sandy native soil, and then throw a large object nearby it to partially shade it for a couple of weeks. It's small enough, you probably don't want to cut anything off of it. One trick I used to do was take a branch off a large tree and use it as a parasol to shade it. Kind of filtered shade for a couple of weeks. The branch will last that long with the foliage on it, then it kind of just turns brown, and by that time this plant is back in good shape. So again, we don't want to do this during the hottest weather. And we'll use the same soil. We pretty much grow just about all our plants in the same soil mix. Volcanic rock, sponge rock, sand, peat moss, and charcoal. And we don't seem to have trouble at all with rot in this soil. There's no recently dead tree that can rot. Now charcoal is a recently killed tree, but charcoal won't rot. Once it's cooked at high temperatures like that, it doesn't rot at all, and it serves as a storage for nutrients. Here I'll fertilize this right away again, and then we'll water it real thoroughly, and then we'll be fine. Now, these are 1 gallon, quote, number one, or you can say 1 gallon size plants. We do 1 gallon, 5 gallon. It's really difficult to do a 15 gallon plant just because of the weight of it. And the larger plants, like 24-inch boxes, we'll probably just do half the root ball, not full with it too much. They're just too delicate at that point to do the whole root ball. So there's too much there to work with. So we'll do half of it and still get decent results. But the more you do this, the more comfortable you get with it. And someday, hopefully, the nurseries will grow plants in the proper soil again, and we'll all be fine. All right? Thank you very much.